All right, welcome back, everybody, to part 2. We left off at the proposed Sustainable Development Goals on number 12, which was to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Number 13 is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Number 14 is to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Number 15 is to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat deforestation, and halt and reverse land degradation, and ultimately to really halt biodiversity loss. Number 16 is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, and to provide access to justice for all, and to build effective and accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels to really make that possible. And number 17 is to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. And I really can't stress this enough, but this concept of partnerships is so key because it really is a partnership between the public, the private, and the nonprofit sectors to achieve these common goals. Okay, so let's shift gears now and talk about why it's imperative to invest in adolescents. Developing adolescent capacities and values through education can enable an entire generation to become economically independent, positive contributors to society. Investing in education and training for adolescents and young people is perhaps the single most promising action to end extreme poverty during this decade. So in order to really accomplish the SDGs now, right, because we're kind of at the end phase of the MDGs, but to really conquer this concept of ending extreme poverty, we need to include adolescents because they really are that next generation of people who are going to make that happen in the next 15 years. Secondary education has a significant impact on individual earnings and overall economic growth. There is an increase in technological labor market demands, and it really demands greater skills and advanced education to scale up productivity and spur capital investment. Investing in secondary education can accelerate progress towards achieving several of the MDGs. For example, greater availability of secondary education will create realistic opportunities that motivate students to complete primary school, thereby boosting primary school completion rates. And that was the second Millennium Development Goal. Secondary education can also have a strong impact on promoting gender equality, which was the third Millennium Development Goal, and improving maternal health, which was the fifth Millennium Development Goal. So data for 24 sub-Saharan African countries shows that adolescent girls with secondary education are 6 times less likely to be married than girls with little or no education at all. So in developing countries, women who have a completed secondary education or higher are more likely to have a skilled attendant present at delivery than their counterparts, thereby improving their children's chances for survival. So this is all really interconnected. Now, as adolescents, as they mature and develop, adolescents and young people really do seek more actively shape their environment, their society, and the world they live in and will inherit, right? Preparing adolescents for adulthood and particularly for their citizenship responsibilities is the key task for families, communities, governments during this stage of their development. For adolescents to be active and empowered citizens, they must be aware of their rights and have opportunities for civic engagement through a variety of institutions that encourage basic civil values such as fairness, mutual respect, understanding, justice, tolerance, accountability for one's actions. The Convention on Rights of the Child broke new grounds by establishing children's rights to be heard, giving children and adolescents the right to express their views freely on all matters affecting them, especially within the family, school, and community, and to have those opinions duly taken into account. This and other participation rights, really enumerated in the convention, enable adolescents to exercise progressively more control over decisions that concern them in line with their evolving capacities. Participation stands alongside the principles of university, the best interests of the child, and the child's survival and development as one of the cornerstones of the convention. So in addition to being a fundamental right, participation stimulates the full development of the child's personality and capacities. Young people learn best when they have to make real choices and are actively involved in dealing with their circumstances. Participation boosts confidence, builds skills, and empowers children to protect their own rights. It allows adolescents to step out of that passive roles to which they were, relegated as young children, and gives them opportunities to create knowledge rather than merely receive knowledge. It empowers adolescents to plan and implement their own projects, to lead, and to accordingly to be accountable for their actions. And, mounting evidence really does show that active adolescents have fewer problems than their peers. They're more skilled and tend to develop a greater sense of social responsibility. So involvement in social organizations also opens the doors to economic opportunities, making it especially valuable for adolescents from previously excluded groups. So, long story short, what this is really trying to get across is that adolescents are really that key demographic to making the Sustainable Development Goals come to fruition. And something interestingly enough, something that adolescents in this day and age have is technology, right? So if used appropriately, the internet, social networking, and related technologies can be powerful tools that enable adolescents to speak out on matters that are really important to them. The youth of this century are increasingly turning to online or interactive activism during relevant and agile networks on the web. So really the old model of dutiful citizenship in which people respond to mass media, are mobilized by government or civil society initiatives, is being replaced by a form of something called self-actualizing citizenship. So politicians, policymakers, and educators should resist the temptation to dismiss young people as uninterested or apathetic, and instead focus on tapping into the power of new and different forms of engagement that are expressed in this, in a sense, in a different language. So that's really how this is all interconnected. As of right now, I'll just give a little summary. We're at the end stages of the Millennium Development Goals. We're embarking on this new 15-year path of the Sustainable Development Goals. And in order to make those Sustainable Development Goals to come into fruition, we need to really invest in adolescents, because they are going to be the ones who are going to be growing with the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's through their creativity and through their hard work and efforts that are really going to help us probably even post SDGs and really make all of this happen and really have a better community, a better society, and a better globe.